Welcome to today's edition of Mainstream. I'm Harpreet Singh Toor. आप सब नु प्यार भरी सत श्री अकाल, नमस्कार, आदाब and shalom. And today, before we deep dive into other politics, we have a very special guest with us today. The first Asian to get elected from New York City as a congressperson and congresswoman, excuse me. And I have the honor of working with her even before she became a congresswoman. So she's going to be with us, and we're going to talk about what's going on, what happened, and let's have her first say hi to you. Hi, Grace. Say hello to the viewers before we jump into the ship.
Hi, everyone. Good to be back here with all of you.
Thank you. I know a lot of things are going on, but first let us look at January 6th. When everybody, including the Republicans, some of the tapes which came out from the hearing, they are showing that they were also scared and they were on the same page with everybody. But walk us through what exactly happened on and after that the Republicans, they have all of a sudden, shifted totally to the whole different atmosphere. What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I am surprised at the turn that it's taken. This was really a day that, whether you are a Republican or a Democrat, was very sad for this country. And that day, these people were breaking into the Capitol, breaking windows, doors, putting feces over the floor and the walls. And they were going after, looking for Congress members, and also trying to say that they were going to hang the vice president, who is a Republican. It was a very scary day. I was myself locked in a lounge near the Speaker Pelosi's office and near the House floor. My friend and I, my colleague and I, barricaded ourselves in this room. And we were scared. There was no one coming to get us. They told us that they didn't have enough officers and the National Guard was not coming. So we had to hide there for a few hours. But really what went on that day was just so offensive to democracy. And I'm glad to see that people who, defaced their property and threatened lives are being held accountable now.
No, that is fine, but the question comes in, even though those people who actually implemented whatever they were told to implement, that's how I look at it, okay? But there are no consequences for the people who actually instigated the whole thing, who were working for more than a year just in case that if the Trump loses the election, then this is the route they will take. And I'm not really surprised at the role which the ex-mayor Rudy Giuliani played, because from day one, even before he became mayor, I always smelled that there was something fishy about him. But do we really expect that these big fishes, sooner or later, they will get caught and there will be a justice?
Well, I truly hope so. I know that many of them are going through the system now. I know that they have subpoenaed the former president's information as well. So we are still waiting to see what happens with all of that.
And interestingly, the minorities were basically the target, including, I'm pretty sure that whatever list they have, sooner or later, they definitely would have come for you also had they succeeded. And the top list was Nancy Pelosi, then AOC, and then other minority, Omar, Ilhan, and others. Okay? And I'm really surprised that divide which has been created in this country. And, Kevin McCarthy is playing very active role in it. And you are part of the House. Do you think after the election there probably will be a shift? Do you really think so or hope so?
Well, we don't know, honestly. We are right now in the midst of one more week till Election Day, till the midterms. So we have to see who wins or maintains control of the House. That will be very important in determining the future of, even some of these investigations and the kind of rhetoric that has been going on for so long.
Uh, in case which everybody is talking about, if the House is lost by the Democrats, then the Republicans definitely are not going to proceed with any investigation, are they? Are they obligated to continue or not to begin with?
Well, unfortunately, they are not obligated to continue. So if they win control of the House, I don't expect this January 6th Select Committee to continue its work.
So which means that the January 6th committee, which is working right now, they have to print their report before the end of the year, right?
I believe so. The Department of Justice separately could always take action as well.
Okay, and which falls under basically the president, who definitely is going to be till 2024 unless he declares that he's going to run again. Let us talk about some of the senatorial races which are going on. There was a time when it looked like that the Republicans probably are going to stay where they are. They may lose 1 or 2 seats, but right now it is like neck to neck, and they may gain a seat or so. What exactly is being discussed, if I may ask you, within the inner circles, in case the things do not go the way we expected them to go?
Right. Well, obviously, the Democrats wanted to keep the senators that are there already and then to win 2 additional seats. This would allow us to pass more types of legislation to be able to help more people. Some of our toughest races are states like Georgia, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and these are really states where the Asian American community can actually make a huge difference in the voter turnout and the results of who wins those Senate seats. So I'm hopeful that that will happen.
Well, we definitely are hoping. When it comes down to midterm election, anyway, the turnout is less as compared to presidential election to begin with. Number one. Number two, I want you to give a direct message to Asians and South Asians, because this show is watched mostly by South Asians, that how important it is for them to come out and vote, because so much is online. I want you to tell them and explain to them why and how they can still make a big difference in the results.
Sure. Well, we really do want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to encourage our Asian American community, which is the fastest growing community in this country. In 2020, Asian Americans played a huge role in getting Joe Biden and Kamala Harris elected to the White House. We, as Asian Americans, were in many states the majority and the margin of victory in these battleground states, and made a huge difference in who won the White House. And because of Democrats being in the White House, we have been able to pass legislation from the Inflation Reduction Act to the American Rescue Plan to the bipartisan infrastructure bill that allowed more opportunities for all of our communities. But we know that there is much more work to be done. Many times I hear about issues like immigration reform, and that's something that really can't be done unless we win more seats in the Senate and hold our majority in the House. And so that's something that I'm really asking people. I met someone while I was campaigning on the street today. They said, I like the Democrats. The Democrats are more thoughtful and comprehensive about their immigration policies. And they also want to pass gun safety legislation, so I won't be scared to send my kids to school anymore. And someone said that to me on the street, and it really resonated.
Yeah, before we go into infrastructure bill, where except few Republicans, everybody was against. Nobody signed on it, whether it was House or Senate, and everybody is claiming, whenever they take the shovel for the new project, they are like, oh, we brought it to you. But before we talk about that, I want you to talk about, there was about hate crime bill, which you took the initiative, and it was finally passed and signed by the President Joe Biden. You want to give some details on that, what it contains and how it will affect you and me, especially people who look like you and me?
Sure. Well, the past 2 years, because of COVID and because of the former president using words like China virus and Kung flu, many Asian Americans have been targeted and blamed for the virus. We've seen cases of people being verbally harassed and physically attacked and even murdered. And so the Asian community has really been through a lot, being targeted during the last few years. This is something that is not, unfortunately, foreign to our South Asian brothers and sisters after the days and the weeks of 9/11, who were often targeted and labeled and treated as if they weren't true Americans. And so what this legislation did was to require our federal government to take these bias incidents and hate crimes more seriously. And one of the good things that has come out of this initiative is that we've seen our different communities come together. We've had people from the Jewish community, the Muslim community, South Asian leaders across the country saying to us, we know what discrimination looks like, we know what hate crimes, we know what bias incidents look like, but we also need X, Y, Z. And so everyone worked together to put together this bill, which will now require the federal government to actually report data, collect data on what's happening. People don't really know what's happening. They are not required to report any of these incidents to Congress at all. So if we don't know what's happening and what's going on, it becomes harder to solve the problem. We also want our law enforcement and local government entities to better train their staff so that they know how to investigate these types of incidents, and to also work, this bill will also work to make it easier for people to report bias incidents and hate crimes in multiple languages. And most importantly, to give resources and funding to so many of our local civil rights organizations who are literally working on the ground, answering calls from so many members of our diverse Asian community to help them combat discrimination and hate, which is still going on in this country.
We're going to take a small break here, and after the break we will continue on infrastructure and also Roe versus Wade. Let's take a break. After the break we will be right back. Welcome back to Mainstream. Let's continue where we left. We're going to discuss, like we mentioned at the break time, infrastructure and Roe versus Wade. I think Roe versus Wade, even though infrastructure bill was passed after, I think, the biggest since Eisenhower's time, correct me if I'm wrong, right, Grace?
Yeah.
Yeah, so let us talk about Roe versus Wade. Why, after all these promises by Brett Kavanaugh and others, those three justices which were appointed by Trump, and of course Mitch McConnell, he played the Senate the way he wanted it, denying the President Obama to begin with, number one. Number two, denying even President Joe Biden the vacancy, even based on whatever his philosophy was. So how the people on the Hill feel about it, and where do you think we are heading on that part?
Well, it is, we've always felt that it was very hypocritical and dishonest of some of the interviews who did not share what their real thoughts were, and then obviously went against what they said that they would do and what they believed in. But we are where we are, and it is very scary for so many women around the country, especially in the States, where a doctor could literally be prosecuted if he's helping, let's say, his patient who is having a miscarriage, or helping someone who is a victim of rape or incest. You know, we are over regulating and literally telling women what they can and cannot do, and forcing, it's like government forcing and mandating people to have a baby. This is just, you know, very shocking to so many people who are watching this from around the world, that America is going in this direction. And one of the fears of Republicans gaining control of the House and or Senate is that they would try to institute a nationwide ban on a woman's right to choose.
I will share my personal experience, because when my wife, she was being treated for a cancer, there was an instance where it was basically, you know, it came down to whether she should go ahead with the pregnancy or she should lose her life, you know. And the decision was between the doctor and her, even though we did spoke to each other. Now the question comes in for me, it is more like the men are trying to control the women indirectly. That's how I'm looking at it. Even though the women probably are majority in the United States, I think they constitute about 51% as compared to 49% of the men. But the men are dictating the women how to do everything, you know, including their body, and how if somebody gets, like, you know, you're talking about rape and incest, that no, they have to carry, it will heal the wounds. How the hell they are talking about it will heal the wounds? What are the options basically for the women from your perspective as a woman, what they should be looking for? And again, I want you to then reinforce how important it is to retain the House and the Senate, so that the women can have the right what they should have to begin with.
Sure. Many Republican leaders have been very clear that they would push a nationwide abortion ban, and that would affect us even here in states like New York. And thank you for sharing your personal story. And that could be the reality for so many families across the country who wouldn't be able to make that decision on their own. What we are seeing here in New York, we also have a governor's race. This could affect us here in New York if, for example, the Republican candidate wins the governor's race. It could be something that Lee Zeldin would be able to block access to opportunity for a woman to make these choices on her own.
Yeah, I'm sorry, on the show I cannot really endorse anybody, because I'm independent. I'm going to endorse on my own. But the question for me is, you know, not only Roe versus Wade about it, but also on the guns, we had, you know, safety at least in Times Square and certain areas, and there is so much now with the even the gun laws out of the window. And now we also have on the chopping block the higher educational reservation, which is being debated right now in the Supreme Court. Where do you think we will end up?
Well, the gun safety legislation certainly is a very scary situation. Many people, including myself, are parents of young kids, and sending them to school every day, worrying about whether they will go through something horrific and hoping that they will come home alive. The House was able to pass gun safety legislation, but we still need the Senate to be able to pass legislation that the House has already passed out as well. We need stronger background checks for people. Right now, it's pretty much, if you do a background check in some areas, and no information comes back, you wait 3 days and you can buy the gun. We should ban all assault weapons in this country, even veterans of war, people who have served in our armed services. They all say there's no reason for the average person to have access to an assault rifle.
I know you have to go. I want you to give your thoughts and whatever you want to share with the viewers before you say goodbye to them or before you go for your next interview. I know we are around the corner for the race, but go ahead.
Well, I really want to thank you, Harpreet, for this opportunity to talk with your viewers once again. I know that our communities here in New York and around the country have been through a really tough time these past few years, whether it's COVID, whether here locally in New York, we've had flooding, Hurricane Ida. Families have really gone through a lot. And so what we've been trying to do is to make sure that our institutions, whether it is our hospitals, our schools, funding to keep our communities safe, funding to make sure that our mass transit, our subways are safe, resources for people who need more mental health support. These are some of the issues that we continue to work on. And I'm really grateful for our community who in so many ways stepped in during these tough times in the past few years, and will continue to work to bring back resources for our families, our small businesses, many of whom are struggling, language access, so that all of our community members can access the programs that governments are providing and should provide. So I really just hope everyone stays safe and don't ever hesitate to reach out to our office if we can be of help.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Congresswoman. It was really an honor, and thanks for coming on the show. And right now we are going to talk about, after we go for a break, before we are going to continue from where we just left with the Congresswoman and what's happening basically at the U.S. Capitol. Lindsey Graham has been ordered by the Supreme Court to depose in front of the grand jury, where the president at that time, the President Donald Trump, actually was literally forcing the governor of Georgia to find exactly one more vote than what he lost by. And Senator Lindsey Graham was privy to that conversation also. So we are going to look at all these issues which are going to come up, how we deal with them, and how the Department of Justice, even if, like the Congresswoman said, even if the Democrats lose the House, and let us take the scenario, the worst scenario, even the Senate, but still we have a sitting President Joe Biden, who is a Democrat, and Department of Justice is under him. And it is not that I'm saying it because of what I'm saying, but the fact is that, like the President Joe Biden promised, that he will keep his hands off from Department of Justice. That's exactly what he's doing right now, and letting the Eric Garland do the job for Department of Justice, being totally independent in going into the inquiries, including the documents which were taken. And yes, that reminds me one thing which I want to share with you. When President Donald Trump talks about that, President Bush took the documents, President Obama took the documents. No, nobody took the documents, but yes, every president has the discretion to say that these documents should be held till a library, presidential library is established so that those documents can be then transferred over to the presidential library, where the scholars, they can go through all those documents and they can look into it, and they can then write the books, come to the conclusions. And that's how the history actually is looked at, because this is important. This is what matters when we talk about a democratic setup and we talk about the rule of law. In the rule of law, the question then, for me, when I look at it, the question comes in, everybody is equal under the law. That's why they have the blindfold on the lady with the takdi in her hand. But then again, yes, money can buy some of the law, in the sense that they can buy the best attorneys who can twist the facts. And in today's world, where the social media is playing such a big role in testing everything, we are going to talk about it right after the break. Welcome back to Mainstream with Harpreet Toor. We just spoke to the Congresswoman Meng, who happens to be the first Asian to get elected to the Congress from New York City. She has been very helpful, no doubt about it, but the issues which we discussed, the facts, I'm going to state some of the facts here. The infrastructure bill, even though we did not get the time to talk about, that was the biggest infrastructure bill which was passed and signed, and now the projects are happening throughout the country. And interestingly, many Republicans who opposed it tooth and nail, they are taking the credit for the bridges and the roads and the new hospitals, or renovations of some of the hospitals, or additions to the hospitals, in the name of that they are bringing the money to them, whereas it was not them who actually got it. With the elections, it's a tragedy that what happens is, all these achievements, whosoever decides what to talk and what to discuss in the media, what to put out in the advertisements to change the minds of the people, some pundits, like they say, even they may be wrong down the road in the end, like it happened in 2016, but they decide that this is what we are going to run. And I have shared it before, and I'm going to share it again here, that what happened was, once I had the chance to have a conversation with one of the person on MSNBC who was talking about that Hillary Clinton will win, and even though right here we said no, she will not. And when I came across him later on, and then I was in Washington DC at one of the conversations, and we were actually one of the pollsters, the people who take the polls, making the calls and talking about it. He was there also in that discussion, and I asked a question to him after the conversation was over, that he was wrong, and his answer to me was, well, technically we were not wrong, because we said that she will win. She still got more votes than what Trump did. How does it matter? If Trump became the president, does it matter? No. Even though in case of the current president, the sitting president of the United States, Joe Biden, he got not only more votes, but also the the collegiate votes, which actually the matter, from each state, which represents, and then they talk about, anybody going above 270 will become the president. Even though Donald Trump is declining to concede even today, excuse me, that he lost the election. And election deniers there are more election deniers out on there. Let's look at one thing, Maricopa County in Arizona. That was a biggest target for the Republicans and the then President Donald Trump for the fraud. Okay, they did a ninja audit. They had a team, and it was also named Ninja Audit or something like that. And at the end of this thorough investigation, which was done by a private entity, it happened for the first time that the elected state representatives gave that authority to a private entity to do the audit. And at the end of the audit, they did not find a single vote which was not counted properly. And in another state, I don't know what state it was, but if you Google, you will find out. And one of them was Florida. And there was one more where they did find one vote, just one vote, which was not cast properly. And guess who was the person? A Republican. He casted the vote twice at two different locations. Even Mark Meadow, who was chief of staff for Donald Trump at the end of his presidentship, he voted at more than one place, and he listed his vote somewhere where nothing existed. He had a trailer home, and that's where he was registered. Then he was at another place. And so what I'm trying to say here is that with the social media, what has happened that we have enclosed ourselves in a bubble. And within that bubble, we stay within that bubble. What information we want, we just get that information which is, thrown into that bubble. We refuse to go out of that because we don't feel comfortable either going out of the bubble, or we just are afraid that what may be on the other end. And today's political class, which I'm looking at, both Republican and Democrat, they refuse to be statesmen. There are nobody which I really see who I can say that, okay, this is a person who is a statesman. Everything is either to the left or to the right, and nobody really is talking to the people who are in the middle, whether those are Republican or Democrats. And everything has to be there in the middle. And that is something which we need to discuss. That is something which needs to be discussed day in and day out. We need to communicate with each other, not at each other. We need to talk to each other, not at each other. And democracy literally means participation individually and collectively. Individually in the sense that you go out and vote, which is very important. Early voting is going on right now in New York and in a lot of other places in the country. There are shorter lines now to go out and vote than what it will be once we have on November 8th. Even though we are going to talk about on November 8th, right here, we will definitely discuss about some of the elections and what's going on. We will try to get you some information, may not be the complete information, but as much as we can come up with, we can put together from different sources which actually are working on the ground and getting the information from them and sharing with you so that you can be up to date about that information. We will try our best, but it doesn't mean that everything will be right, but we will try to get you as much as possible closest to the right. And while I'm talking to you, I just got an update that the gentleman, I will still call him a gentleman, who attacked Nancy Pelosi's husband. Basically, he was on a suicide mission. He was looking for Nancy Pelosi, and he was going to literally torture her and ask her the questions If she gives the answer which he wants to hear, fine, which he is claiming. And if she does not, then he was going to break her knees and probably her skull also, like he did to her husband Paul. For me, the question is Don Jr., Donald Trump Jr. He is still giving those statements. Even Trump came out with a statement which is a very fishy statement after not immediately condemning it. Like, on the Proud Boys, he said, stand down and wait, which means basically those were the people who were ordered by the president, and they are admitting now that yes, they thought that they were being given a command by their president, who happens to be the Donald Trump at that time. And also we should not forget that there were issues which were related to the then president Donald Trump about evangelical Christians, which I'm going to also talk about it in a moment after we come back from the break. Welcome back to Mainstream with Harpreet Toor. There is something which I want to talk to you about, especially to the Sikhs who are out there voting. There is a gentleman by the name of Vibhuti Jha, who is a Republican, and he is running to be an assemblyman from Assembly District 16 somewhere in Long Island. He has posted a lot of messages on Twitter and on other social media against Sikhs, Muslims. Excuse me. I don't know if he included Jews or not. And he has praised Hinduism. I'm not against any religion, but if we are looking for any hate statements, then we don't need to go that far away, go and look at what is happening under BJP, which is controlled by Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh in India. And what is happening, and the Indian Prime Minister, anytime something happens, he keeps quiet, which means basically when you don't condemn something, it means indirectly you are sanctioning it. And he is praising that Hinduism is inclusive. No, it is not the way it is being depicted, the way it is being used. And he is using that in this election in the United States. We are already divided on the voting and democracy and who has the right to vote and who should vote and who should not vote, who should immigrate, who should get the green card, and whose kids should be going to the college and which college and university they should be going. All that matters. And here this person is throwing in the religion into the race along with, like Donald Trump did. Remember I talked about evangelicals supporting Donald Trump? They still do, because somehow they believe that he is the one who can create an Armageddon, and that's where the final prophecy, which is into the Christianity, Catholics from Rome, they believe in, would happen. No. These elections have nothing to do with anybody's religion or the faith. The elections are about who can be a better candidate and who can be a stronger candidate to represent your interests, whether those are at the ground level, state level, or national level. At state level, assemblymen and state senators, they do matter. At national level, congressmen and state the senators, the 2 senators, U.S. senators from every state, they matter. And we don't want anybody. I have been talking about statesmen, that we need a statesman. And the statements being put out and the tweets being sent out by Mr. Jha, those are ridiculous, those are sickening. So before you go out and vote in Assembly District 16, I personally will request you to look at those tweets, make a judgment, and then vote. I'm not going to tell you not to vote for him or vote for him, but I definitely will advise you to look at the tweets and then make up a judgment who you should be voting for and how your vote should go. Now coming back to the Brazilian president Jair Bolsonaro, he was so far saying that he's not going to concede, even though he did not concede the election, but he has given go ahead for a transition team to hand over the powers and the keys to rule to Del Silva, the new president-elect, who happens to be a leftist, like they say in the media, instead of Bolsonaro, who happens to be right. The question basically comes down to where we are heading. There used to be a time where we had the people who will talk about within the families and the elders, they will talk about what's going on in the rest of the world, how it affects everyday individuals, you and me, our lives, how it matters. But right now, what is happening is nobody's really looking at those issues. Yes, it is so costly to buy chapati atta or roti atta, dals, vegetables, and everything. But nobody is looking at it that it is happening because the shipment of the grain from Ukraine is blocked. India has decided not to export the wheat anymore because of the situation, and oil prices have gone through the roof because of this, even though the things are being blamed on the current president. But now all of a sudden we see that all these corporations who actually own the oil companies, they have their profits soar through the roof, and nobody is questioning that. Again, the corporation, the way they are now, they are the ones who actually are controlling directly and indirectly who should get elected in certain democratic setups. And that is something which is I'm scared of, that down the road the things will be decided by these billionaires and trillionaires, that who should be the president and which party should be the ruling party. So within a democratic setup, like they say, dark money stepped into the politics after the U.S. Supreme Court, under the majority of the Republicans, Republican appointed justices, declare that corporations are humans. Now the corporations are using that to the hilt to have the laws which favor them. And that is what is affecting you and me and everybody else on daily basis. This is the time you need to get out and vote. Make sure that you definitely go out and vote. Next Tuesday is the last day for voting. We definitely are going to talk about it by then. But yes, you need to get out and vote, and make sure you go out and vote. With that note, good night and good luck.